as long as I am in the world.
I am the light of the world.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another Jesus Talks live stream. I'm your host, Dari. And as you guys can see here today, we have a very special guest with us. We have our beloved father, Stephen Embarado, who has been a guest here on this channel before. And as you guys could tell, we're going to be doing something very interesting. We're going to be reacting to this very popular debate, pro-choice versus 20 pro-lifers. So this is a very important topic. We're going to be discussing a lot of these prompts that were thrown in this debate. So I'm very excited, and I thought who better to bring in than Father Stephen. Father Stephen, thank you so much for being here with us today. I really do appreciate you dedicating your time to come on here.
Always a pleasure to be with you, Ari, and always good to be able to hopefully bring some spiritual guidance to your listeners and your watchers, your following. And I just really do thank you for this opportunity. It really is very, very important for me. And it's very important for our babies, our preborn, right? Because, of course, abortion is an abomination against God. These are his babies that we're mass murdering.
Absolutely, and I agree, and I have said this before in my show, and I will repeat it again. You cannot be a Christian, you cannot be a Catholic if you are pro-choice. You know, and to be a Christian, to be a Catholic especially, is to be pro-life. The defense of human life that starts at conception up until natural death. And I think it's very important that we talk about these issues and that we give responses to these topics and talk about these kinds of debates as well. And that's why I'm as you guys can see, if you guys are watching my videos lately, I've been dedicating a lot of time, especially to the pro-life movement. We had on Elizabeth many times to talk about all these different things as well. But I think for this specific debate, I think it's will be very interesting to hear Father Embarado's perspective on these different prompts. This was a debate that was on the Dr. Daff show, a secular show where they host a lot of debates with women, different topics. This was again one pro-choicer versus 20 pro-life women, and those pro-life women actually happen to be Christian, a mix between Catholic, Protestants, and a variety of different Christian denominations. So I'm very excited to get into this. We are most likely going to be doing a part 2 because this is kind of lengthy. We're just going to get through specifically Naima's, I think that's what her name was. We're going to get through her arguments and her prompts. What are some of the answers that she is giving to these prompts? And therefore, we can also get Father Embarado's take on it. Like, what does this actually mean? So, again, very excited. I will link everything down below as well for you guys to be able to contact Father Stephen. I will link his website after the show and his socials so you guys can go check out his material, check out his stuff, and support his ministry. Because he is I consider one of the heaviest pro-life hitters right now. So, all right. So let's pray. Father, can you lead us?
Name of the Father, Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. Father in heaven, name your Son, our Lord Jesus Christ. We ask send the Holy Spirit down upon us, Lord. Thank you for this hour. Lord, you know we desire to do your will. Show us your will. Give us the strength to do your will. Lord, you know we desire to do all things for your praise, honor, and glory. May this hour give you as such. And Lord, please open up the hearts and minds of those who hear us and see us, that in some small way in this hour we can bring souls to salvation, and in some small way bring the scourge of abortion in our cities, our state, our country, and our culture to an end. And we ask this through the intercession of the Blessed Virgin Mary, Saint Joseph, all the angels, martyrs, and saints, in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. All right, so let's get started with the very first prompt. So let me see. Let me look at the timestamp because I believe it is around 2 minutes. So let's see. Perfect.
Okay, my first prompt is: a fetus is not a baby and does not deserve full constitutional protections.
I'm Noelle.
I'm Maya.
I'm Shayla.
I'm Yasmin.
Okay, hi ladies. So I chose this prompt mainly because of the kind of equal protections movement that's been going on in pro-life circles, this belief that a fetus is the same as a human that has already been born. I disagree with that, and I don't believe that they deserve full protections.
So I think we need to clarify a little bit. As a pro-lifer, I don't believe that a fetus is valuable because they're a baby. I believe they're valuable because they are an innocent human being. The scientific consensus for when life begins is fertilization. That is what 96% of biologists agree from across 1,000 different academic institutions, is when the beginning of a new, unique human being's life begins. Not just human cells, not just a human life, but a new, unique human being.
So if I could just jump in there is no scientific consensus on when life begins. There is not.
So this is from the National Institute of Health. The scientific consensus is that 96% of biologists agree that a new, unique human being's life begins at fertilization.
I'm sorry, love, this is not true.
But it is. I just gave you the source. Do you
It
have
is
a dispute?
undeniably
When do
not
you
true.
believe that a fetus becomes a human?
Well, I don't believe that I can say when a life begins. I don't believe that anyone in this room can say that when a life begins. I think that the only one who can really say when a life begins is God. And though it's not stated, because it's not stated in the Bible, and there is no scientific consensus, we can sit here and argue about something theoretical that none of us know, or we can argue what is known. And what is known is that a fetus is not viable until around 23 to 24 weeks. The youngest ever was 20 weeks, but a fetus generally is not viable, meaning it can't survive outside of the womb until
So
23
what
weeks.
is a fetus if they aren't a human being? Because humans can only create other humans via reproduction.
A
We
fetus
can't
is a
create anything
human
other
because it
than
has
another human
human
being.
cells, but it doesn't deserve legal personhood, right? That's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about when life begins, because we can all have different definitions of that, and no one knows for sure.
All right, Father, would you like to comment on what she just said?
Yeah, it's very difficult to debate somebody who's going to deny truth, right? I mean, this gal who said that the consensus 96% of scientists, right, believe that human life begins at conception. Know that human life begins at conception. That's a known fact. That's an accepted fact, right? That's not it's not some opinion, right? I mean, it's interesting that, and I don't know how this is going to go, but there's plenty of examples. If you listen to, for instance, the pro-life doctor, I don't know, and I forget his name. I think it's Dr. Lyle, who does a whole hour on the whole medical science issue in regards to babies, right? That babies in the womb are patients, right? I mean, in the medical industry, they're considered patients, right? Of course, abortion doctors don't view the baby as a patient, but the medical industry views a baby as a patient if indeed the mother views the baby as a patient, right? So, we have a situation here in the United States where we're denying the constitutional rights of the preborn, and abortion is considered legal. All right, we have a situation where this inalienable right to life endowed by our Creator, right? And the Constitution does say that. I would have responded to her, how do you define the inalienable right to life endowed by our Creator? The 14th Amendment says that no state can deprive any person of life. That means the inalienable right to life endowed by our Creator. That's enumerated in the Declaration of Independence. All right, when do you believe this inalienable right to life comes into effect, right? Arbitrarily, based on the whim of a mother who could decide to keep her baby one day and kill her baby the next day, on the whim of a state legislature, on the whim of where the mother is. Is she in Texas or New Mexico? The day of the week, like for instance in Missouri, when on Tuesday the babies had full constitutional rights after an amendment was passed. On Wednesday, the babies had no constitutional rights. What does the inalienable right to life endowed by our Creator mean? Right? It's an inalienable right endowed by our Creator. In other words, it's inherent in us. It's not given to us, right? And so, I would have questioned her and said, so at what moment do you think, right, that we receive our inalienable right to life? That's actually the question I want the Supreme Court to answer. And I think that this debate here brings it right out in the beginning. I want the Supreme Court to answer. Supreme Court justices of the United States, all 9 of you, all right, enjoy this inalienable right to life endowed by our Creator that is protected by due process and guarantees us equal protection. That's the 14th Amendment. At what moment do you believe you receive those rights? At what moment do you believe that everyone in this country, every person in this country, received those rights? That is the critical issue. That's the constitutional question. That's the constitutional narrative, right? That's really what we should be discussing as a country. And that's what I would have asked her, and saw how she answered. Her answer that we don't know. The traditional response to we don't know is, well, then we've always erred on the side of caution, right? The traditional response is what? If you're a hunter in the woods, right, and you see a shadow, right, and you're not sure what it is, and you think it's even possibly a human, you're not going to shoot it, right? You're going to err on the side of caution, unless you absolutely know. So judicially and legislatively, in an historical context, legislatively and judicially, we'd always err on the side of caution. Leading up to the 14th Amendment, right? Leading up to the 14th Amendment in 1868, legislatively and legislative history and judicial history always was that once life was detected in the womb, life was protected in the womb. And you can look at Ohio. When Ohio signed on to the 14th Amendment, they came right out and said that, right? That once life is detected in the womb, life is to be protected in the womb. Almost every state constitution or legislature had laws. After Dobbs in the Arizona, the Arizona Supreme Court, there was a law in the books going back to 1865 that said the same thing. Once human life is detected, human life is protected. And that was then overturned, or the legislature by one vote in each house of the Arizona legislature, denied the existence of that 1865 law. Well, those votes were unconstitutional because, again, according to the 14th Amendment, no state can deprive any person of due process, nor deprive any person of equal protection, right? And that's exactly what we're doing in this country. We're depriving the preborn, and she wants to deny that the inalienable means. She wants to deny that inalienable means inalienable, right? She wants to deny. She says only God knows, right? And then if only God knows, then when God creates life, and the Catholic Church teaches this, right? Human life begins at conception, therefore personhood begins at conception. And from conception, every person should be treated with respect and protected. So it's not going to suffice her. Everyone who's listening needs to understand that whatever argument they throw out, she's just going to dismiss it based on her opinion. Right?
Yep.
I'm using this platform to educate people on the constitutional narrative. We need a new narrative, all right, to basically get people up to knowledgeable about the 14th Amendment and the implications of it historically and what it means now post the Roe versus Wade and this Dobbs era.
Yeah, and they do address that. I do believe, I don't remember if it's in this prompt exactly, they do address that 14th Amendment argument. One of the pro-lifers one of the pro-lifers actually does talk about that. So I know she. I mean, her definition is going to be very strange. So let's keep listening. And Father, if at any time you'd like me to stop or something, let me know and I'll stop. So let's continue then.
What we are talking about is legal personhood under the law. I do not think that something that is not yet a person, cannot speak for itself, does not have the capacity to sustain conscience or viability without the life of the mother, can be assigned the same constitutional rights as someone who can.
So then do you define personhood by people's ability to live on their own or their ability to speak? You yourself right now said that it's about someone being able to speak or someone being able to exist on their own. Is that how you define someone's worth or personhood?
No, that's not how I define someone's worth or personhood. I define someone's worth or personhood based on the 14th Amendment. So in the 14th Amendment, that's our right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, all these things. We like them, right? Right, yes. So I define personhood based on the first sentence of the 14th Amendment. It says all persons born or naturalized, right?
Can I interject here for just a second?
No. Because a fetus has not been born, it cannot be given the same constitutional value as a human who has been born or naturalized in the U.S. Now, if you would like to respond to that.
So that's the citizenship clause, all persons born or naturalized.
there
It's
you
not
go.
actually a defined.
Yep. And I love how she explains that, because it's like the fact that she has to use the 14th Amendment to try to determine what personhood is. Like that to me, I was like, are you serious? Like I
Yeah,
found that
let's-
to be a
let-
very
Ari-
weak argument.
Ari, if everybody goes to CatholicAbolitionist.com, my website, you'll see that I have the 14th Amendment, and actually rallyforpersonhood.com too. 14th Amendment. So let's deal with this issue, because there's a lot of pro-lifers who are confused about this, and I appreciate this young lady, all right, bringing this up, and she's absolutely right. Okay, so the 14th Amendment starts off. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state where they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. That is the citizenship clause, okay? And I think it's important that I enumerate that, right? Which this gal probably didn't. She just alluded to the citizenship clause. I think it's important that we read that. And then clearly, it enumerates the rights of a citizen, right? Who a citizen is, right? And their rights. Persons born or naturalized. So not every person, but all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens. So basically, they're referring to the universal class of persons, and which of those persons are citizens. Okay? Now, it continues, nor shall any state deprive any person, right? No restriction, any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction, doesn't mention citizen, the equal protection of the law. So if you notice, and you probably don't remember, just recently when Trump started the mass deportations, okay, there were groups, all right, immigration groups that went to the Supreme Court and said these persons, these immigrants, these illegal aliens are being denied due process. They're being deported without due process. The issue wasn't, all right, whether they were citizens or not. They clearly weren't citizens. They were illegal immigrants, but they were being denied their due process under the personhood clause, right? And the Supreme Court agreed. You can't deport these people without due process. They deserve due process, right? Even though they're not they're not citizens, right? So everybody knows, just because she wants to muddies the water, anyone who's a constitutional, understands the Constitution, knows that there's two different clauses there. It's written without a period and then a capital N. All right, but if you remember, or if you think about the Second Amendment, all right, and how much confusion there is because there's no punctuation, that's the way they used to write back in those days, and indeed, but clearly you're talking about two distinctions here. All right, as she said, the citizenship clause and then the personhood clause, and that personhood clause has no restrictions, whether it's citizen, non-citizen, it's everyone, right? And so the question becomes, when do we become constitutional persons? When? And of course, babies already have protection in the womb. The classic example is what, Ari? Right? In countries where, in states where the mom is deemed pregnant, she wants her baby, right? And even in the early stages of pregnancy, if she is shot and the baby dies besides the mother, right, it's a double homicide, right? Not every state has that protection, but almost every state does have that protection, right? So the babies do have rights, all right? Some rights in the womb already. All right, we're saying that these rights should be equally, all right, equal protection, all right. And again, it should understand that the babies can get their equal rights without endangering the rights of the mother, right? This is not incompatible here, and of course that's what the pro-aborts think, right? But it's not true, all right? The woman deserves equal rights, but this mindset that these babies are endangering the mother, right? That these babies are threatening the lives of the mother, right? Is absurdity, right? And of course that has to be exposed.
Yeah. So that is one of the big ones that I did want to hit. Now, I'll go to the second prompt, because at that point they're just arguing about what they think a baby is, and
that's right,
and all that. So let's see. Let's go.
I'm glad that that's the first issue they deal with, because to me it's the most important issue.
Yeah. So yeah, they deal with it for like a while. So it's kind of okay.
Right.
All right, now this is the second prompt, guys. So let me just they argue this the first prompt, they argued it for like 20 minutes, deciding what is a baby. Like the whole time was a conversation running in circles. What is a baby? What is a fetus? Why does it not deserve to be called a human being? Why do they not deserve the rights? How in the 14th Amendment does it like not? Her arguing that it doesn't include them. The pro-lifers saying yes it does. So it kind of just ran around in circles. So now this is the second prompt that she made up, which was this one.
To justify a pro-life argument is unconstitutional. Hello, ladies. I'm Naima.
I'm Savannah.
I'm Rochelle.
I'm Julia Kate.
Hi, I'm Maddie.
Hi, I'm Aniela.
Okay, you guys, so for this prompt, I realized after I submitted it that it was not as clear as I wanted to be. So let me make something perfectly clear. I am not here to attack whatever your faith is, whatever you believe in your life, and however it, dictates how you move in the world. That is absolutely your right. What I have an issue with is using religion to justify legislative decisions, because that's when it becomes about other people having to follow your religion. If you have a personal belief that dictates how you move, that is absolutely your right, but just don't make it my issue, is my thing.
Would you like to comment on that, or do you want me to go a little farther, Father?
Yeah, even if you go to CatholicAbolitionist.com, and let me, so those of you out there who know what I'm about, I formed this group called Catholic Abolitionist, basically because the abolitionist movement in this country is fundamentally Christian, right? Fundamentalist Christian who are anti-Catholic. And so, and I think that they are really very, very rigid and almost anti-women. And I think that Catholic mindset is really more reasonable and practical. But, I said, what is a Catholic abolitionist? A Catholic abolitionist is anyone of any faith persuasion who stands on two basic absolutes, the constitutional absolute of the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution and the moral absolute of the Catechism found in 2270. So, of course, that would freak this girl out, right? Therefore, seeking immediate abolition of abortion through constitutional person from the moment of conception. So what is the Catechism 2270? I already enumerated for you the 14th Amendment. Human life, and this is the Catechism, human life must be respected and protected absolutely from the moment of conception. So she denies that conception is a human life, or she at least denies that we don't know when life begins. It's not a human person. From the first moment of his existence, a human being must be recognized as having the rights of a person, among which is the inviolable right of every innocent being to life. Now, notice they don't mention abortion. The Catholic Church doesn't mention abortion. It's universal because I just gave you examples how the 14th Amendment applies to not just the unborn, right? The 14th Amendment applies to many constitutional groups, including illegal aliens, right? But the religious argument, I would just give her that. I would give her that. So what? Let's. Are you denying that there's a God? And I'm sure that one of the girls are pointing out that the separation of church and state is to protect the church, not the state, right? That there's no state religion, but that we are one nation under God, and that this concept of God, right, does drive our moral code, does drive our Constitution, the inalienable right to life endowed by our Creator, right? So to just dismiss God, so she wants to dismiss, right, science, she wants to dismiss God, right? She really wants to dismiss everything so that she can kill any baby anytime she wants for any reason that she wants, right? I mean, this is ridiculous. And I will tell you, Ari, I want to make it very clear for everyone listening, this debate is wrong, not just because she's wrong, but I have a staunch rule that I don't debate evil with evil. And you might say, well, Father, you're calling her evil? Surely she is immersed in this evil mentality, right? If she's at least agnostic, if she's not atheist, I don't know whether she believes in God.
She claims that she does. She claims that her and her mom are Christians, but that they are pro-choice.
Yeah, well, look at, yeah. So, the fact of the matter is that this can be dealt with, all right, apart from a religious argument, right? And as much as I bring in Catechism 2270, I bring that in Catholic abolitionists for one reason, well, two reasons actually. Number one, the question that I would ask the Supreme Court, and everybody's listening out there. Somebody asked me once, Father, if you had 5 minutes in front of the Supreme Court, how would you address the constitutional narrative? I said, I'd only need 30 seconds. And I would ask the 9 justices of the Supreme Court, justices of the Supreme Court, all of you enjoy an inalienable right to life endowed by our Creator, as enumerated in the 14th Amendment. It's protected by due process and guarantees you equal protection. Could you tell the people of the United States, in the light of the fact that babies seem to be denied up until the day of birth their constitutional rights, sometimes completely, other times partially, can you tell us all here, when did you 9 justices receive your inalienable right to life? When did you all receive the inalienable right to life? Now, of course, this is the reason why they're not taking a personhood case, because there's only one answer. And don't forget, there's 9 Catholics on that Supreme Court. And because there's 9 Catholics on the Supreme Court, the 9 Catholics all know what the answer is. And the answer is human life must be respected and protected absolutely from the moment of conception, from the first moment of his existence. A human being must be recognized as having the rights of a person, among which is the inviolable right of every innocent human being to life. And again, that's because we know now that human life begins at conception. Even the Supreme Court knew that in 1973. Blackmun said if it could be unequivocally determined that human life begins at conception, it would render Roe moot because it would become a personhood issue. Well, Jerome Lejeune, devout Catholic guy, who was the father of DNA, he was the father of everything that we know about DNA. All right, he formulated, for the most part, in the 1950s. He testified, I believe, before the United Nations, that the Supreme Court of the United States, when they determined we don't know when human life begins, they lied. That they knew when human life begins because science is known, right? Well before Roe versus Wade, that human life begins at conception. As a matter of fact, I think that 96% was actually higher back then. You just got some pro-abort infiltration into the scientific movement who doesn't even know what a woman is, who are also trying to deny that human life begins at conception. So the Catholic Church answers that simple question that I would ask the Supreme Court. And because the Supreme Court is 6'9" Catholic, and that our vice president is Catholic, many leaders in the Republican Party are Catholic, and most of the leaders of the pro-life movement are Catholic, and then you have the USCCB, right? They all put their head down on the pillow at night, knowing what the Catechism says about the 14th Amendment. And so it should cause us to be bold, brave, and confrontative. Confront these people about the truth, about the absolute moral truth and the absolute constitutional truth, right? So I don't debate evil with evil, right? And let me bring it back to another religious context, okay? when Michael and let's your listeners will enjoy this, okay? In Revelation chapter 12, right, we have the battle between good and evil starting when the Lucifer and the angels rebelled against God, right? And then war broke out in heaven, right? And then the disobedient, the defiant angels were tossed down to earth, right? But don't forget, Revelation chapter 12 starts with the woman, all right, adorned in the sun, all right, with the moon at her feet, right, 12 stars on her head, pregnant with the child who ruled the world with an iron rod, right? So, and then the serpent attacked the woman. The battle between good and evil started when the serpent attacked the Blessed Virgin Mary, Our Lady of Guadalupe, pregnant with our Lord in her womb. And then war broke out in heaven after she was drawn up to heaven and protected. And then war broke out in heaven. So I find that very interesting. And it also says in Revelation chapter 12, Ari, and very few people recognize this, it said the serpent wiped out 1/3 of the stars from the sky. How does that relate to our issue today? How many, the general fact around how many abortions, how many pregnancies end in abortion, all right, we've always used about 1/3 of all pregnancies end in abortion. And here in Revelation chapter 12, the battle between good and evil started with Satan, the serpent, attacking the mother, the woman who was pregnant with the child, ruled the world with an iron rod, and he wiped out 1/3 of the stars in heaven. That's significant. All right. Then war broke out in heaven. So this is spiritual warfare. And I don't think, all right, that you can deny that this is a spiritual battle, right? So I would ask this young gal, this pro-abort, are these babies children of God? At what point in time you call yourself Christian? At what point in time do we become children of God? She's a non-Catholic Christian. She's going to say when we get baptized, when we're born. Well, you don't even believe that we baptize infants, right? I mean, those are the types of questions I would ask her in the religious context, although generally I would yield to her the whole religious ground because I don't have a discussion with evil about evil. And what I was getting at before is when Lucifer and his angels rebelled against God, do you think that God said, well, let's sit down and discuss this? Let's sit down because maybe we can find common ground. No, he said, Michael, get rid of these guys. Get rid of these guys. They're done. They're done, right? We should not have a debate or discussion about evil with evil. And that's what we're doing here. And this is how the evil one creates confusion. And that's why I wouldn't have participated in this debate. I think these debates are dangerous. I think that even Lila Rose, when she debates the 20 pro-aborts, that's dangerous, right? Why are we giving the other side or any credence to the other side's arguments? Stick to our arguments. If I can go on for a minute, Ari, I think that the people who are listening and watching be very interested in the Kathy Ireland. Do you know, Ari, who Kathy Ireland is?
I do not, Father.
All right, so Kathy Ireland is a very famous, and she's older now. She was a swimsuit model, Sports Illustrated swimsuit model, okay? And then she became an entrepreneur. And she had a conversion. She was pro-choice, and then she became pro-life. And as she tells her story, she became pro-life because when she got married, she married a Christian guy. A guy who was a doctor, and he was doing his internship. And she talked about how he would be away at 72 hours at a time. And of course, doctors are in their internship, their residency, work obscene hours. And she'd be home and newlywed. And of course, she made the joke that, I make $1 million a day as a model, so I only work 8 days a week. I mean, 8 days a year. So she goes, I had plenty of time on my hands. And she started reading his medical journals. And by just reading his medical journals, she came to the understanding that the entire medical community, all right, knew that human life began at conception. And her being pro-choice, she came to the realization that, wait a second, if human life begins at conception and abortion ends a human life, all right, that basically abortion is murder, right? And so she decided, having been a convert to Christianity, that she was going to go around and tell her story. Well, it was either Fox News or CNN that came up with a big idea to have an Ireland versus Ireland debate. Because Patricia Ireland at the time was the head of NOW, the National Organization of Women. Okay. And so, again, I don't remember whether it was CNN or Fox News, but I remember the debate very distinctly, and they did a split screen. And so you had this very beautiful Kathy Ireland and this Patricia Ireland, the head of NOW, and a split screen. And the host came on and really kind of denigrated Kathy Ireland with the, you're a beautiful swimsuit model, right? How could you ever come to an understanding that abortion is murder, right? Like this, and Kathy Ireland said, retold the story as I told in a thumbnail, all right, very quickly, right? She goes, I came to the realization by reading these medical journals that human life begins at conception and abortion ends a human life, right? And so they said, all right, Patricia Ireland, how do you respond to that? And then she gives the typical woman's choice, right? It's up to the woman, blah, 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 right? And then they switch back to Kathy Ireland. Kathy Ireland says, and she starts with, but they're babies. They're only babies, right? And we're killing these babies. They're little babies. And then they switch back to Patricia Ireland, and she says, well, women's reproductive rights and rape and incest and all the classic pro-abort arguments. And then they switch back to Kathy Ireland. Now she's making like she's cradling a little baby. And she's going, but they're little babies. She got the baby talk going and everything. She goes, but they're little babies. They're just babies. And we're killing these babies. They're just little babies like this, And then they switch back to Patricia Ireland. By this time, she's speechless. She's red-faced, right? She has no answer. She has no answer. That's why this young lady started with the premise that we don't know when human life begins, because the bottom line is, and my response usually is, oh no, when human life begins. That human life begins at conception, and you're killing babies, and you have no problem with killing babies. That should be the only answer. That should be the only answer. No. Human life begins at conception. Human life begins at conception, right? And you're killing human life. You're denying their rights. You're killing them. You know that. I know that. We all know that, right? I mean, that should be the answer. That's the only thing we should be telling them. There's two things we know. Human life begins at conception, and abortion ends a human life. That's what more do we know? Why are we having this other debate? By having this debate, we're legitimizing their arguments, their feelings, their opinions. I wouldn't do that.
I agree. And I think it's just crazy so far, because even throughout this entire debate, she doesn't make a single good argument into why she's actually pro-choice. Now this using religion to justify pro-life argument is unconstitutional. You know what? I'll give her that, because not everybody's a Christian. Not everybody believes in God. Okay, fine. I'll give you that. But I think going back to her first prompt, her saying like, oh, well, this is what personhood is, and tries to deal with the Constitution. And I'm just like, well, that's just talking about the rights that somebody has. It doesn't actually address the actual definition of what it starts with the human life. And I do believe that if she would have said, yeah, life does start at conception, like you mentioned, Father, she would have to admit that she is supporting killing babies. And know that that's not protecting her, because everybody wants to throw in. It's curious, Father, how she throws in that 14th Amendment argument. It's very, very funny how she tries to use that to her advantage, when in reality that falls apart if you think about it.
Well, and again, we shouldn't give any credence to it whatsoever, right? I mean, she thinks there's. I mean, a simple question to ask her is there any time that a mother can kill the child in her womb and you think it's wrong? Right? I mean,
the issue is they do.
Did they ask her that question? Did they ask her that question?
They did, and what's funny is that she always fall back on that doesn't matter. She runs around in circles and goes, right, that doesn't matter, because she's apparently so focused on the way the mom is going to be affected, right, the way the mom is going to be burdened with this. So it's always mom. But I'm like, if we really, and what these pro-life ladies did was they try to tell her, you care so much about the mom, but it's like, but you're forgetting that there's one other human life right there, right, as well.
But look, we should come to this understanding through reason, and we shouldn't legitimize her lunacy, right? So the fact is, all right, that it's mom, so it's not an alienable right to life endowed by our Creator, right? It's a right to life determined by the mother, right? So let's use the terminology. That's what she's saying. That's not what the 14th Amendment says. That's not what the 5th Amendment says. That's not what the Declaration of Independence says, right? She is saying that the right to life of that child is determined by the mother or the legislature or a vote of a people, right? Well, that denies, all right, the universal meaning of inalienable, right? And so she then has to say that what? When do we obtain the inalienable right to life, liberty, and property? Right? And again, if she used that case, I mean, probably you can make a case for the fact that liberty and property it starts when you're born, but that's not the case. All right, our inalienable right to life, to liberty, and property. All right, in other words, happiness. All right, does start from the moment of conception, endowed by our Creator. And again, the fact that we don't know should always cause us to err on the side of caution, right? And that's why human life beginning at conception, all right, is so important, right? But, again, this all goes back to why I think these debates are dangerous, whether it be Lila Rose debating 20 pro-aborts, or whether it be this gal allowing 20 pro-lifers, all right, to confront her. I think it's dangerous. I think it's dangerous. I think you are giving evil a platform, and you're in some way, shape, or form legitimizing their opinion, right? Their evil opinion, their murderous opinion, and I just think it's wrong.
Yeah, even back on the other prompts as well, like when she's talking about personal, like defining like what they're able to do and all this stuff. Now, one of the arguments which we didn't get to, when we didn't get to see this part, was somebody confronted her and told her, what about the elderly who can't fend for themselves, who have to be dependent on another person to help them out? She's like, what about them? Are they not considered a human being? Are they not considered a person? And she's like, oh no. She's like, well, they used to be able to, like, she tried to throw in this whole other thing, and she was confronted with that, which at the end of the day, and that's exactly what they're trying to point out, is like, that's so contradictory. So you're saying that somebody who is unable to fend for themselves, whether it's a physical, mental disability, it matters, but that a baby, like, life starting at conception, that's hypocritical.
Ari, again, this is when you have debates like this, if she makes 3 good points, somewhat reasonable points out of the hour, there are people who say, well, she made 3 good points, right? That, in other words, how do you win this debate? How do you win this debate? Who wins this debate? Who won the debate, right? It's not, again, you don't debate, you don't have a debate about evil with people who want to call evil good, right? You just don't want to. You shouldn't give them a platform. And from a Catholic mindset, right, we shouldn't be dabbling in this stuff. We shouldn't be. Right?
And I also think it's not only that, though, because at the end of the day, like, especially for this debate, if you look at the actual comments section and the reaction that it's gotten online, because I actually took a really good hard look at it, there are many people that said that this young lady did amazing in that debate. There are many people that's also divided and said the pro-lifers gave really good arguments. So at that point, like you're saying, Father, then what is the purpose of this debate then? Why platform something like this when there's not even going to be a consensus?
It becomes a matter of opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, exactly. what by having a debate, you are basically saying, well, it's a matter of opinion. This is all a matter of opinion, right? And it's not. It's not.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that is the case for a lot of it, And it's funny enough that even some pro-choicers don't even agree. And this is something I found out. Not all pro-choicers agree on things. Whereas every person that's pro-life, who's actually pro-life, they will agree on almost everything. Whereas the pro-choicers,
exactly. But not everything, and that's a problem too.
Yeah, because but I see that long division, especially as somebody especially with people who consider themselves pro-choice, because at the end of the day, you can, let's say, for example, she says that life doesn't start at conception. What happens if another pro-choicer says, actually, yeah, life does start at conception, but guess what? I'm still pro-choice and I still think you should kill the baby. So at that point, which viewpoint is correct? How are you going to determine who has the reasoning and who doesn't? It's a very, I think it's very difficult.
Have you ever heard the clip of Bill Maher?
No, I've not.
I'll paraphrase, right? But Bill Maher basically said he don't understand the pro-lifers at all. He says if you believe that abortion is murder, then how are you saying that it's okay to kill babies after 24 weeks, or rape or incest or all of the other, incremental stuff that we deal with? He says, if I believe that abortion is murder, and I do believe abortion is murder, all right, and he goes, and I do believe abortion is murder. He says, but the bottom line is, I don't care. I don't care. I mean, it was the most honest dissertation. You should look it up. All right. I bet you if you could look it up, it's chilling, but it is so intellectually honest. Right. And that's really, he's speaking for all the pro-aborts. He's really saying that, look, you pro-lifers are a bunch of hypocrites. And I said this. I mean, I thought the most appalling indictment of the pro-life movement came after Roe versus Wade was overturned, right? And we have Dobbs, and you had Margie Dannenfelser, along with Lindsey Graham, may he rest in peace, came out with the political strategy for the 2024 election. So you're talking about they formulated the strategy in the end of 2022, right? And in the 2023 debates, all right, the Republican debates, it was the primary strategy that the Democrats are too extreme because they believe, all right, that a baby can be murdered on demand up to the day of birth, that's too extreme, and that pro-lifers say we stand on a 15-week ban with rape and incest exceptions, which of course will kill 98% of the babies, right? There was nothing more hypocritical than that. I mean, if you believe that abortion is murder, then how can you sacrifice 98% of the babies and say that sacrificing 100% of the babies is too extreme? That too extreme argument is still the argument the pro-life movement is using to defend these states where they're having abortion amendments trying to overturn restrictive abortion laws, all right, and codifying abortion up to the day of birth, right? That is too extreme. Abortion up to the day of birth is too extreme. Well, my position is, look at you killing a baby chemically, you tearing its arms and legs off and decapitating at any age in the womb, sucking the mother. Remember the most defining moment in the 2016 primaries between Hillary Clinton and President Trump, and it probably won Trump the election in 2016 when he opened up the last debate and he looked at Hillary Clinton. He says, look, at you think it's okay to kill a baby, to tear a baby limb from a mother's womb up to the day of birth. You think that's okay, and I don't think it's okay. Game, set, match. That's it. It was over. It was over. What are we doing? What are we doing, right? And people see that and say, why should I listen to a pro-lifer? They're all a bunch of hypocrites, right? They contradict themselves. Abortion is murder, but you're okay with abortion up to 20 weeks, 24 weeks. If the baby feels pain, you're against abortion. If it doesn't feel pain, you're for abortion. I mean, this is crazy. This is depravity. This is insanity. That's why I'm an abolitionist, right? I mean, it's abortion is an abomination against God. These are God's babies. We're mass murdering God's baby. That's the religious argument. And then the constitutional argument is every law that allows even one abortion is unconstitutional. It violates the 14th Amendment constitutional rights of the preborn. That's it. That's it.
Yeah. I think it's very very, very unfortunate that now we're starting to see more and more of this pro-choice movement just grow in numbers. I feel like I've been seeing a lot of it, especially online, due to these kinds of debates, unfortunately. And it's
due to
okay.
an unreasonable mindset by the pro-life movement.
Ooh,
The
okay.
same narrative we've had for 50 years. We're losing the hearts and minds, right? More and more people, all right, think that abortion should be illegal. All right, why? Because we've been using the same narrative for 50 years. We're losing the hearts and minds. And instead of going to a new narrative, a constitutional narrative, an absolute narrative, an abolitionist narrative, all right, no, we don't change the narrative. We use the same narrative. You remember the hypocrisy of the pro-life movement. I remember Students for Life and Kristen Hawkins and even Margie Dannenfelser prior to Dobbs saying, when Roe versus Wade is overturned, because remember we had a 6-week heads up, right? We had the draft leaked. When Roe is overturned, we're going to hit the ground running. We're we're the pro-life generation. We have the answers, right? We're going to drive this home. We're going to win this battle. We're winning. We're winning. We're winning. 2 years later, we were getting our heads handed to us, right? We're losing every state amendment, and I said, look at when is our legal resources going to start filing injunctions, filing motions, suing these states because their state laws, these amendments are unconstitutional. No state, think about what I said about the 14th Amendment. Think about what I said, the words of the 14th Amendment. So listen to this. No state has a right to allow a group of persons in their state to vote on whether another group of persons in their state can be murdered or not. Denies the 14th Amendment. And that goes for a legislature, that goes for a governor, that goes for any group or any person in a state. They can't deprive a person of their life without due process, right? In other words, proving that they have forfeited their life, right? They've legally forfeited their life. Due process is some law passed or an amendment passed, right? Due process means that the person has forfeited their lives. And so the state is determined that I can kill you because you forfeited your life through some heinous act, right? Well, the babies, all right, it can never be put in that category, right? So this is the, and Ari, you need to admit that, I come on your show, and for the most part, the greater part of the argument I lay out is not the prevalent argument in the pro-life movement. It's not the prevalent narrative in the pro-life movement. As a matter of fact, every time I give this argument, people say, Father, I never heard this before. I never heard this before. Well, that's malfeasance on the part of the leadership of the pro-life movement, right? We're losing using the same narrative that we've had for 50 years, the hearts and minds, state by state. We're losing it, right? And we're not going to try a new narrative. And don't think for a second that David B. Wright, Leonard Leo, and the Life Coalition Conference and Abby Johnson. Well, Abby Johnson's moving over to abolition. Abby Johnson's moving over to equal protection. But Lila Rose, Kristen Hawkins, Margie Dannenfelser, they're involved in so many different things, so many different topics, and they're any constitutional narrative that they put out gets watered down by all the other things they talk about. And we need to be clear. We need to push everything aside. We need to keep it simple, and we need to keep it constant. Right? These babies are an excluded class. They're being denied their constitutional rights. They're being mass murdered. All right, and this is what we need to recognize in order to abolish abortion immediately.
Yeah, and I feel like, and I think you could probably agree with me, Father. They tend a lot of these modern
You're on mute.
oh, hold on. Can you hear me? Oh, might have been because it took off the video.
I'm sure Ariel will be right back. She booted out. She'll boot back in.
All right, can you hear me, Father?
CatholicAbolitionist.com. CatholicAbolitionist.com is the website. Everybody, please go there. And if you go, it'll lead you to Rally for Personhood. And in Rally for Personhood, there's a whole list of things that you can do in order to, I think, immediately abolish abortion. You can contact the Supreme Court. You can contact your pro-life leadership. You can. I'll come in and Zoom free of charge, no cost to you, for you and 6 of your friends. Right? There's so many things that we can do, but we need to start the national debate. This needs to be a national debate, a national discussion over the 14th Amendment. Just like in 1858, the entire country was debating the moral issue of slavery. A house divided cannot stand. Abraham Lincoln. That's the debate we need to have. But now we have the 14th Amendment on our side, but we need to have a constitutional debate. All right. And I know that once we have that debate, the Supreme Court will take a court case, recognize constitutional person from the moment of conception, and this nightmare will end.
All right, Father, can you hear me? No, you can't hear me. Okay. Hold on. Give me just a second, guys. All right, guys, we'll be right back. I'm just making sure that Father reads his message because I let him know it's his phone. It's a StreamYard bug. If you guys don't understand, it's the iPhone thing. It does it all the time. To do so, but hopefully we can get him back so we can conclude this. We are going to do a part 2 on this as well because there's obviously a lot that we still need to address from that debate. So thankful for that. And so we'll see once Father gets that fixed, but I hope you guys are starting to like the stream. I hope you guys feel like you guys have been properly informed, in terms of this topic. I think Father Abrado is probably one of the best people to be able to do so. So let's see if Father, can you hear me? No, he can't hear me. Okay, hold on. Hold on, give me just a second. I don't think he doesn't see his phone, so give me a second. Okay, hopefully he'll come back. I kicked him out, so hopefully he will come back. Hold on. All right, I let him know, so hopefully do that. But yeah, this guy, guys, this was this debate when it came out. I knew it was gonna be something. I think I didn't know exactly what that would necessarily entail. I didn't think the arguments were gonna be that bad in terms of the pro-choice movement. But I did go with an open mind about that. So hold on, give me just a second. All right, guys. So it looks like we will not be getting Father Abrado back on his end. But again, like I said, we are going to conclude this. we are going to do a part 2 on this. I do think topics like this are important to be discussed. I thought Father Embrado would be a very good choice to bring onto the show and talk about this specific debate. I think it was very interesting. I think that I think it's absurd that sometimes we don't realize how important these kinds of discussions are sometimes. And I see that a lot of people tend to avoid it, talking about it. Me, I've been trying to focus a lot more on these kinds of things, the dignity of human life, the importance of human life, because I think as a Catholic and I think just as a Christian in general, I think that's very important to emphasize that, we care not just about life at conception, but we care it up to natural death as well. And that includes the incarcerated, that includes the homeless, that also includes people that are in hospitals, that includes the elderly. So it's everybody. So we're not just pro-life, not just when it comes to babies. We're pro-life. We're pro-life literally throughout entire life. Like we're up until natural death. And I hope you guys at least take that away. So I will conclude this, guys. Thank you guys so much again for coming on here to join us and to hear these conversations. Um Again, I like to touch on these topics just because I think that they are important to address and I think that they are important to talk about, and I think it's important that we understand why these discussions are important. So, thank you guys so much for joining. I hope you guys join I believe tomorrow or Friday, I don't remember. Oh, Friday night. Friday night. I'm going to be having on Alex from Voice of Reason and Jonathan from Roots of Faith and Apostolic Roots. We're going to be doing a live stream. It's an AMA open panel on Catholicism. So if there's anybody that has any questions, the guys will be here. We're going to party it up, all three of us. I'm really excited about that, to have the brothers back on. This is the second time that I've had them on together. So I'm excited about that. And so yeah, so excited. I hope you guys can join. I hope that you guys enjoy these conversations, these discussions that we've been having. I hope you guys join, ask some questions to the guys. Again, AMA Catholicism, ask anything about Catholicism, and you will get an answer. So I'm excited. That also includes for my Spanish speakers as well. Because Alex, like all of us, we speak Spanish. We're Mexicans, so we're also going to open up to anybody that's wants to join and ask questions in Spanish. So that's also going to be really cool. That's going to be Friday night, and that is going to be, I believe we have it up. That'll actually be 6 p.m. Eastern time. So 6 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. Central time is when we're going to be having that thing. And then obviously a couple weeks later, we're going to be having on some other really cool guests. We're going to be having on Dr. Stephen Boyce to talk about Gnosticism. That's going to be so cool. And then we also have Father Cajetan Cuddy, who's also going to be joining on. And I actually got confirmation the other day that I'm also going to be having on somebody that's very cool. We're going to get Dr. Fastigi. I know, shocker. Dr. Fastigi also is going to be joining us as well. So I'm very excited for that. So I hope you guys are excited. And again, up until next time, thank you guys so much. God bless. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the week.